Okay, this is Rise of Empires. This is a Martin Wallace game. And like most Wallace games, it feels more like a Euro than anything else. Although this one has a lot, and most of them do, a lot of capacity for direct interaction. That's sort of the one thing that differentiates Wallace games from, I guess, more pure Euros. Is this, you have this room to really directly screw with someone else's capabilities. I've played this once. It interested me online. Someone, maybe in the Vassal overview, may have been, I don't know if anyone else did it. I don't remember if Board Game Blogger did it. He's more likely to be the guy. I know he does a lot of Wallace games. He's more likely to be the guy who convinced me to buy it. You know, I picked it up used, of course, and you know, I kind of like some of his games, some of Wallace's designs. Some of them I really didn't like. For example, the historical aspect of Struggle for Empires, it felt, you know, more like it tries to be historical than this one does, and then many of them do. And by making that kind of attempt and failing completely, this one's at a more abstracted level. You're going to be seeing the rise and growth of, really, it's unlikely. It's not like a Vinci type game where empires are rising and falling. A player may be a new empire, may not. It's not like History of the World either, which has that same sort of flavor to it. Here it's really a domination of resources, technologies, and such not. What I've been told by others is this is kind of the kind of game, I guess, that is the modern civilization type game. More in-depth kind of tech design than, say, than the old Civ had. To me, the old Civ is a civilization game because it's about the growth of civilizations. This one doesn't really feel that much like it. It feels more like a Euro to me. Then again, Eclipse felt sort of like a Euro, and that's also got all these complicated tech aspects. So let's explain what we've got here, and then I'll get into the rules. Each player has a bunch of these little cubes, and that's basically his population. He has this little thing, which is for one ability in the game, the diplomacy technology. He's got these discs, which are going to be used for action selection. This is, like many games, an action selection type of thing. And you're going to be using this table here to pick your actions. And then there's a kind of a neat mechanism going with them where basically there's two turns in an era. On one turn in the era, you're going to be filling the chart out, and then on the other, you're going to be unfilling it. It's like deplaning, right? And doing the same actions that you selected. And that's actually a very, very interesting feature in this game that I think has to be paid a lot of attention. You have to pay a lot of attention to that. In my two-player game of it, which I sort of enjoyed in that kind of, hey, this is a competitive, you know, interactive Euro. I caught myself not paying enough attention to, will I be happy doing those things again necessarily, and much more focused on the, hey, this is the opportunity at the moment. Well, you do have to keep in mind that whatever you put here, you're going to have, that's going to be your opportunity in the second phase of that era. Obviously, you also have some cash money. You have these little discs. These are resource discs. I guess they represent manufacturing and stuff like that. And you'll see what they, how they operate. You've got a board of the world, sort of, divided into era regions that are accessible by era. So the white stuff is all you can hit in the first era, the kind of tan stuff in the second era, and then this darker stuff later. But there's restrictions to how you can get places. And there is some weirdness to all of that. Anything else we got here? Yeah, you got a big 3-point marker and turn order markers. So the discs kind of serve, a few of them are reserved for some special purposes. But you got 6 of them for your actions, and that's going to be your action selection per turn. Over here, we've got city tiles, and what you'll see is this, they're also separated by era and stacked. And actually, they're completely deterministic. You're always going to be facing the same city tiles each turn because they're labeled by which part of the era they're going to be in. So there's an A era here, and then below that there's going to be a B turn of the first era, and then the same with each of the others. So since the those markers all get cleared at the end of each turn, so you're going to be facing the same city choices each turn. Some of the city choices, and this one's a good example, have this little tiny red line around them, and those are wonders, and they work a little differently. So cities are things that you can keep in front of you. Wonders are kind of score once things, and I got kind of screwed up on that. You've got this little section here. This is going to be the trade chart, and basically trades are available to you where you put resources in play and you get something for them. So here you'd put one resource in play and you get 2 gold for it. They're distinguished by era again. And so like you can only do stuff with a white in it during the first era, only do stuff with a brown in the second, and only in a green in the third. We have technologies, which also follow that sort of per era situation. But these are a little different from the cities in that they're kind of randomized. So you'll get half the era 1 technologies on the first turn of era 1, and half of them on the second, but you don't know for sure which ones you're going to get. And likewise, as we go through the eras, and there's the same amount of them for each era. And again, those are going to get cleared off the board in each at the beginning of each turn. And ones that are not taken, and this goes for the cities and I believe the territories as well, end up in a pool that's available to be used. Ones that are taken end up in players' hands, or they might end up discarded eventually. The 2 and 3 player game, things get discarded if nobody takes them, and that reduces the pool of excess that's always going to be available if they weren't discarded. Territories, these are completely random. These are again things that players are going to get in their hand, and they have certain production requirements. And basically, hey, I didn't explain everything very well. Basically, so they might have a cost, and that'll be a cost in income that you're going to pay every turn, and they might have and they will have a production. So for example, this island produces a fish and a cube population. The mountain, you have to pay 3 fish each turn, but you get 3 cubes. You get a higher population growth. Each of these have technologies, or many of them have technologies associated with them, which give additional bonuses. Cities, well, their payoff and cost is as follows, and it's a little different from the way those territories work. A city has a startup cost, which will be, say, this gold, but some of them will have a startup cost that consists of multiple things. This is mainly, I think, the wonders. They also might have a continuing cost, which will be these other things over here. There's no plus sign here, so these become continuing cost. And this will cost you a resource and 2 food each turn that you want to keep that city. Well, whether you want to keep it or not, but there's some way to get rid of cities. They also have a payoff, and that'll usually be in victory points, although there may be payoffs of other types in them, if I don't recall correctly. Then you have these, which are basically your empire cards, their campaigns. What they're going to tell you is a number of cubes that you can place on the board, and your cubes are divided into 2 sets. This is your pool, which are ones that are available for you to play using, say, that. And this is your stock, which is ones that, as you produce cubes, for example, the mountain here produces 3 cubes a turn, you'll be moving them from your stock into your pool. When you lose cubes, they go generally back into your stock. And sometimes you might even lose cubes from here, I think. So that's part of these cards. If they have little water on them, that means they're going to allow you some transit through water. In the earliest stage of the game, that means you can occupy the Mediterranean, which is just like a land area. We'll explain the areas in a bit. The lower section is your combat ratio. You're allowed to make an attack in eras 1 and 2. and these cards actually flip over in Era 2 and become different. In Era 3, let's see if we can find an example. You're able to make 2 attacks with some of these cards, and they'll have to be in different areas. What the attack means is that if you happen to share an area with someone, you take a loss equal to the left-hand side in that area, and your opponent takes a loss equal to the right-hand side. You don't have to meet the loss, which is to say, if I have only 1 piece in an area and I play this card for an attack, I can take my 2 losses and wipe myself out and do 3 losses to an opponent, and that can be kind of a valuable. It wipes you out of the area, but it causes more losses than you would otherwise. And I'll again explain all of these in a little bit more detail. I'm not doing things in the best of circumstances, best of organizational manners, of course. You want to see that, watch Vassals. I'm sure it's a clearer overview. This is really just an introduction to the playthrough and then the review. Over here you have the food track, and that's going to track how much food you have on hand. Instead of giving you some kind of discs or something for it, you just keep them here. What's kind of neat about the food track is if you don't have enough food for your people, each time you need to eat and you can't, you lose a victory point. And the victory points are tracked over here. They can't go below 0. When you go over 20, for every 2 additional food you produce, you get a gold. Kind of sets a baseline value to these things. Okay, what about the board locations? So on board locations, they have production perhaps, which is stuff they make, and that's if you're the majority holder in that territory, you'll get that stuff at the end of the turns. They also have victory points, which are split into the majority and then the second place finishers. If 2 people are tied, they sort of split the goods from whatever territories they hold. Like I mentioned, the Mediterranean Sea is basically like a land territory, except you can only access it through the water chits, and then these water chits on the second and third layer are going to allow you to transit to foreign markets. There are some weird rules about that, though. Among other things, you can't go to any of the foreign markets until a specific technologies come out or a specific era comes out. This is your action selection section. Each player in turn, following the turn order, basically puts a little piece down next to what they want to do. And these are grab an empire card and enact it, grab a city that you can pay for. You can't place a disc here if you can't do the action. This is pick up a technology chit. Now the technology chits have some iconography on them that is perhaps understandable in and of itself, but luckily there's also a player aid card, and there's one for every player that gives the sequence of play and gives an explanation of all the different tiles for all the different eras, all the different progress tiles. So one player does one and does something right. This allows you to do a trade, which will allow you to turn resource chits into something else, which is very neat. And this one allows you to grab a territory space. And that cities, technology, territory chits, these just go in front of you. And most of them give you certain payoffs or whatever. So like this allows you to trade food essentially. You'll pay a food each turn and you'll get a victory point. Technologies are broken into 2 types here. One is food income victory point tiles. They just produce for you. The other is free action tiles. The way they work, for example, this colonize, it allows you a one-time shot to turn 1 or 2 white cubes into 1 or 2 money. And you flip it over, and you get to do this once each turn, and you can do it freely in conjunction with any of your actions. But the action that you buy it in, you're not allowed to activate it. Which means you probably don't want to buy such a technology as your 6th action on a turn. You want to have another action where you can actually use it. Okay, I think that's most of it. Let's go through, see if there's anything exciting here that I haven't gone over. All right. Yeah, I haven't gone over the cleanup at the end of the turn, and at the end of eras. That's kind of important. So you collect your golden resources, you collect your food at the end of the turn, you get your victory points at that point, and then you determine turn order, which is going to be the person with the least victory points goes first, or gets first choice of what location they want to go in here, and so on upward. I don't remember what the tiebreaker is here. Least game tokens, gold, player cubes, and resource discs. And to some degree, those things have a certain amount of being able to be transferred from one to the other through some of these tokens. For example, this one allows you to turn cubes into money. Okay. Now, at the beginning of each turn, something I didn't explain, all these tiles get put next to the display, and they're available for use by other people or by everyone. And then the next layer gets revealed. The one exception, so like I said, in the 2 or 3 player game, any tiles that you pick up that don't get picked up end up just getting discarded from the game, with the exception of certain tiles over here that have kind of a reddish tinge to the bottom out of the technologies. Those are always available no matter what. And those kind of get discarded at the end of each turn back to the pool and available to use. They don't take up any slots, so we're going to have a place to keep them, probably up there or something. Okay, anything else here? Not that I can think of. At the end of an era, okay. This is at the end of each B turn in an era. Now remember, in the A turn you put the discs forward, in the B turn you're taking the same actions and removing discs. There's one little twist to that. If somebody else, say it's White's turn, if somebody else is further to the, I don't know, right, left, how do you want to call that? I'm going to say left, looking this way. If somebody else is further to the left on the track than you, well, you can't just take this for free. You have to basically pay a token. And I think the choice there are, let's see if it's here. No, it's not just a token. It's a gold. You have to pay a gold for each space that you're off. Now, if you don't have a gold, because you must take an action, no, they change it here. It's a gold, a player cube, or a resource disc, a food, or a victory point. And that's for each disc that you're skipping in the order. So this guy, well, if White wanted to play this, he'd have to give up an item. And the player aid's a little wrong. And I think there may be another error on the player aid. Somebody has something crossed out. It's probably from an in-game errata or something. If it's, I'll check to see if it's on the counter, actually. If the counter matches what's on the player aid. Yeah. Anyway, if there were several pips in front of you, they don't all have to be the same color, you'd have to pay 2 of the same kind of thing. And no matter what, you're going to have something to pay, but if you have nothing to pay, well, you could choose to, I guess, pay victory points or something. I don't know. I think that's an impossible circumstance, or nearly so. Okay, what else do we have here? Right, ending the era. So at the end of the era, after the B turn, after everybody's removed all their discs from here and done the actions that those discs corresponded to, now you can only keep your progress tiles if you pay a gold for each one that you keep, and you can only keep your city tiles if you take a cube out of your pool and put it back to your stock. You get to keep all your territory tiles for free, and then you lose half of any cubes you have on the board in each territory. Which means, and everything's kind of rounded up to screw you. So if you only had 1 cube there, you'd lose it. If you had 2 or 3, you'd lose 2, etc. Object of the game is to get the victory points. I think money's the next tiebreaker or something like that. But there are a couple of things that apply to add to your victory points. In particular, every 3 money and every 3 resources you have gives you victory points. You also want to look at how you generate victory points as you go. Cities, generate them each turn. Now remember, if you want to keep your cities between eras, you're going to have to be spending cubes on them. But that's kind of okay, especially for a city like this that doesn't have a continuing cost anyway. That's really not that big a deal. So it's kind of nice to pay the 2 gold, get this free. This city that pays free for every turn. A city like this kind of sucks because you're paying 3 resources, well, 1 resource, 2 food, but 3 stuff per turn to just get a victory point. This one's giving it 3 food for 2 victory points. Food is fairly common and easy to come across, but of course, once you boost it up to here, every 2 food gives you a gold, and gold is kind of less easy to come across, etc. The wonders are one-shot victory point things. There's a couple of late events up here, like religion, that let you score bunches of victory points for the territories you hold. There are others that just let you score victory points, like, hey, have 5 victory points or something like that. Everything kind of interacts with each other. We'll kind of took a look at the different technologies as we go. Some of them let you pull your cubes off and rearrange them and stuff like that. Just lots of cool little things like that, but all very abstracted. None of it really seems to link really with, you know, some kind of expansion of an empire. This doesn't have any of the feel of that. This is really just a Euro, except I didn't tell you anything except for the conflict aspect, which is down here, and then of course dicking each other over. These get filled out, and you can't fill it past the 4 space in 2 players, over here in 3 players, over here for 4 or 5 players, 4 players across the board, 5 for picking these empire cards, and then out to here for all the other actions other than empire cards. And there's 8 of those, so 8 of them fill out, which makes sense. Everything else has more possibilities. Now, cities has kind of a weird situation. There's only 5 cities available until you hit the 3rd round. So you don't want to go beyond here in cities. In fact, you're not allowed to place one of those tokens if you can't take the action. So if you don't have the cash to pay for a city at the time, you're not going to do it, which means you might not get a chance to remove that token on the B round. Now, you don't have to do the action on the B round, though. You can choose to just make a null action with it. Although, if your disc is in that kind of disadvantaged position, as we had here, you still have to pay even if you're not getting anything for it. I think that's about it. All right, let's send this off.